Diablo III is an obscure and mostly unknown game. It came out to little fanfare in 2012 and was almost immediately forgotten about, leaving the series in a state of limbo where it has stayed and there have been no other Diablo games. Resolving to uncover the mysteries of this digital relic, two friends and I made an excursion to the lost city of Battle.net, the only place you can obtain a copy outside of the eldritch hellscape of cdkeys.com, or the abominable G2A, where sirens beguile hordes of lustful coomers to become trapped and join its legion of nameless denizens. Luckily, the only threat that my party faced was taking a wrong turn and ending up in Warzone, a barren wasteland dominated by a never-ending conflict between the two opposing tribes of the YY Ladderstall Sweatlords and those who possess a strange psychic ability known as wall hacks, and whose native tongue is unutterable by anyone who's not an asshole. After purchasing the game and turning down the merchant's offer of ill-gotten breast milk, we created our group of stalwart adventurers. First there was McSkirt, the world's least psychotic Warhammer 40k fan. Then there was Retnus, as a totally not culturally insensitive caricature. And finally, there was me, Zombie Hobo 49, who created a medium-sized titty goth GF who posts 10-year-old memes to Facebook and commands an army of undead Starbucks baristas. Together, we shall overcome the trials and defeat the minions of... Don't worry, I'm not going to talk like that the whole video. Dropping all the sarcasm, Diablo IV is out now, and it's pretty damn good, or at least me and my friends have been enjoying it. While we play through that, though, and get footage for it, I decided it might be kinda neat to take a look back at Diablo III, its development history, and its rocky post-launch lifecycle. Starting from before the beginning, after the release of Diablo II Lord of Destruction, work was begun on a second expansion, which some speculate would have been named Diablo II Salvation. This expansion was intended to expand upon the PvP aspects of the game, but work on it eventually halted, and the team shifted their focus onto the development of Diablo III. In its original vision, Diablo III was intended to be an MMO, similar in many ways to the then upcoming World of Warcraft. After a period of development on this version of the game, where other design aspects were decided upon, such as setting the game primarily in heaven and using an insectoid visual style for the demons, a new directive was given to the team by upper management. Make it like Diablo 2. After being hit with that fucking sledgehammer, the team was forced to completely overhaul everything they had been working on. From this point on, the game became known internally as Diablo 2.5 and was designed as such. Many on the development team were unenthusiastic about this change in direction, with one developer expressing that the game in its current form would probably be good, but not groundbreaking, like Diablo 2 was. Despite pivoting back into a more small-scale co-op experience, the general attitude around the studio was that Diablo 3 would still lay the groundwork for an eventual Diablo MMO. After various setbacks during development, the team working on the game was eventually disbanded, and the project had essentially entered development hell. Obviously not willing to let as successful of an IP as Diablo go to waste, Blizzard Irvine, the mainline studio, began work in 2005 on a new iteration of Diablo 3. Building off of what the original team had made, this version gradually morphed into what we would eventually play ourselves. Unlike the previous version, the goal here was to make something much more unique and innovative, as opposed to being a retread of old ground. Things like the art style and story adopted different tones from the first two games, and emphasis was placed on laying the groundwork for a Diablo MMO with the inclusion of the auction house, which I'm definitely going to talk about later. In May of 2012, Diablo III was finally released after 11 years of development. And if I told you it went smoothly, I'd be a goddamn liar. Almost immediately, the game was beset by several major controversies, the first and probably most infamous of which was Error 37. You see, Diablo 3 was part of that push for always online gaming that developers and publishers were so eager to roll out in the early 2010s. This pissed people off for a litany of reasons, but the biggest ones were A, Diablo 3 could be played single player, but still required an internet connection, and B, on the game's launch, Blizzard servers melted faster than a popsicle in an oven. On day one, there were a shitload of people who straight up could not play the game, and were greeted with the message, "The servers are busy at this time, please try again later." So yeah, that's not a great first impression. The second big clusterfuck was the auction house. I remember reading so many articles about how much people hated this goddamn thing back in the day. You couldn't pay people to shut the fuck up about it. The original idea for the auction house was to serve as a way to prevent real money trading. During the days of Diablo II, there emerged a kind of black market of people buying and selling in-game items for real-world money. Being that it was unofficial and done through third-party channels, there was no oversight, meaning that scams were running rampant. The auction house was supposed to be a way Blizzard could provide an official channel for RMT that they could keep an eye on, as well as shave off a portion of the money made off the deals for themselves. So this backfired colossally. Right off the bat, you had people asking, doesn't it kind of defeat the purpose of a looter game to be able to just buy rare shit? And it did. One of the most satisfying things in Diablo is killing a boss and getting a rare item, or an item that's part of a set. It's where a lot of the game's replay value comes from in the first place, grinding out bosses and areas just to get that one item you need to finish your build. What's also neat is that it can allow for some happy accidents to happen. Maybe you're trying to get one specific item, but instead you find another just as good, if not better one instead. Being able to just go and buy whatever the fuck you need erases this aspect of the game, you know, the main aspect, almost entirely. Not everyone hated it, of course. There was one guy that made like 10 grand off it, but for the most part, it didn't get the warmest reception. Blizzard, still in possession of their ocular faculties, saw this, and so just before the release of Reaper of Souls, they removed the auction house and introduced Loot 2.0, a system geared towards making grinding for loot drops, aka the whole point of the fucking game, more rewarding and satisfying. With the perils of the game's development and the controversies of its release out of the way, let's talk about what it's like to actually play it now, in 2023. So me and my two friends started up the game and almost immediately started saying stupid shit.
Hello.
It fell on the old cathedral. There was
I am
only
the
one
generic
survivor.
white savior trope.
Leah, you should speak with her. Captain Rumford.
Of course you would say
We
that.
can't open the gates until we get them.
Oh no.
They keep coming.
I don't know if that's going in the video or not.
That's definitely going in the video. Are you kidding me?
As I said earlier, the three classes we chose are Crusader, Witch Doctor, and Necromancer. There's 4 others, but we didn't pick those, so they're not relevant, fuck them. The only other class I played is Demon Hunter, so I can't really give you a rundown on how each one works. To my knowledge, Crusader is kind of like a combination of Paladin and Warrior. Witch Doctor is actually fairly similar to the Diablo II Necromancer, and the Necromancer herself has been streamlined to less of a summoner and more of a caster role. You still get an undead goon squad though, don't worry.
Dude, we are squatted up right now.
Dude, we got the
gang of Tristram.
Yeah. The Tristram
We got-
side hoods.
We got the mutant dogs. We
These
got
fields used
the
to be
ghost
so
skeletons.
beautiful.
Every
Uncle
gang's got
Deckard
some of
told me
those.
stories
Yeah.
of them when I was.
Given that we were making brand new characters starting at level 1, we played through the game on the scrub difficulty. This, in combination with the fact that we went through pretty much every dungeon we came across, meant that by the end of Act 1, we were already severely overleveled. If you're unfamiliar with Diablo, what that means is that basically we were doing story missions with higher player levels than was intended, leading to scenarios where we were killing bosses within seconds. Like I said earlier, I picked the Necromancer. Necro is my go-to class in pretty much every Diablo, but the D3 Necro is kind of weird. In 2, and now 4 I guess, the Necromancer is able to be built in several different ways. There's Bone Necro, Blood Necro, Hex Curse Necro, and my personal favorite, Minion Necro. In Diablo 2 I had a fucking army of goons that do my bidding. Like, I think I had a little over 20 in total by the end of our second recent playthrough. Diablo 3 did not initially have Necro at first, so a lot of his summoning abilities were given to Witch Doctor instead. This means that when Blizzard eventually came out with Rise of the Necromancer, they had to rework the class a little. You can still summon Skelegoons, but the emphasis is more on being active than just sitting back and debuffing enemies while your zombies do most of the heavy lifting. Playing Minion Necro in D2 felt almost like playing an RTS at times, but D3 forces you to play a lot more actively. This isn't a build video, so I'm not going to go over every single nuance of the class, but just off the top of my head, some key differences are you can get your Skellies to Zerg rush a specific target, which basically melts bosses. Mages don't follow you around and despawn after like 3 seconds, and you get this ultimate ability called Army of the Dead, which absolutely wrecks shit. It's a much different experience than D2 Necro, but I see why they went this route. Like I said, a lot of old Necro's abilities basically got funneled into Witch Doctor, so if they were going to bring him back, they kind of had to reimagine how he would play. Personally, I found it kind of refreshing to take a more active role in what my group was doing, but I definitely missed having half the screen filled up with my goon army. I think Diablo IV manages to strike a really good balance between the two playstyles, while also just in general allowing for a lot more build variety than Diablo III's fairly constricted leveling system. So after about 5 straight acts of pile driving our way through the forces of hell, we managed to finish the game just in time for Diablo IV. I'm not joking when I say we were over-leveled. Literally the only boss that gave us any trouble at all was Malthael, and even he still didn't take that long to beat. Fun little bit of trivia, there was actually supposed to be a second expansion to Diablo 3 called King of the North, but it got shit-canned in I think 2016, which is also around the time that Diablo 4 got rebooted and taken in a different direction, but I'll talk more about that in another video. All in all, it was fun to revisit Diablo 3 one last time before moving on to D4. The game went through a lot of hurdles, both before and after its release. It still may not be perfect, but I think in its final state, it's a super fun dungeon crawling, loot gathering, demon slaying, story ignoring, drop grinding clusterfuck that's worth remembering. Hey everybody, if you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thanks. It means a whole lot. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all the standard YouTube outro stuff. And other than that, I will see y'all in the next video. Goodbye.